Yo, what's up everyone, I'm back again with another review. Today we'll be reviewing the Eweadn S9 Max. Now, just a quick disclaimer, this mouse was sent out to me by Eweadn, but of course, that doesn't affect my thoughts and opinions for this review. Now, to start things off, let's talk about what's inside the box. So over here you have your USB Type-C cable, your user manual, a set of grip tapes, and some black PTFE skates, as well as your 8K polling dongle. Now looking at the bottom layout over here on the left side you have your DPI button. You also have your on and off button over here. Flick it up for 2.4 GHz. And this is capable of Bluetooth, so you just need to flick it down for Bluetooth. And then at the middle is your off button. You also have your full-size PTFE skate at the top. Unfortunately, I'm currently using the dot skates because these come with black PTFE skates, and I'm not really that big of a fan of black PTFE skates, so I had to replace them with these cheap AliExpress dot skates. And then over here at the bottom, you also have your two corner skates, and over here you have your USB dongle storage, which in my opinion is pretty weird considering that this mouse does not come with a 1K dongle. Maybe it was made for the previous iterations or like the lower versions of this mouse, but yeah, in my opinion, for the Max, you don't really need to use this since it doesn't even come with any USB dongle 1K receiver. Then over here as well, you have your ring skate on the sensor. The build quality on my S9 Max is actually pretty good. I haven't had any signs of creaking, flexing, or even rattling inside the mouse. And overall, I do think that the build quality is pretty good. I also haven't had any issues with slam clicking as well as double clicking. But the scroll wheel does feel a little bit lighter than what I am used to and what I prefer on a mouse. It's not as light as my ES21 Pro. I think the scroll wheel on that one is much lighter when it comes to the scrolling. But I did also still had some experience with scroll wheel jumping in-game when using this mouse, and it doesn't really happen that often. I would say that the ES21 Pro is much more often than the S9 Max, but even that mouse, I didn't really have that much experience with scroll wheel jumping, just from time to time, and for this one, it's pretty much the same as well. So do be aware that the scroll wheel is pretty light and may or may not potentially make you experience some scroll wheel jumping in-game. But overall, I do still think that the build quality is very good. Like I said, no creaking, rattling, flexing on the mouse itself, and just a pretty good job from Eweadn. Now, I just want to quickly glance over the skates on this mouse. Like I said, I'm currently using dot skates on this mouse, but the included PTFE skates is pretty much similar to the stock skates on this mouse that came with it. And like I said, they are black PTFE skates. They're not really the best. They're definitely usable in my opinion, but for performance, I would say that they're not really that great. They also felt a little bit scratchy on my mousepad, especially over here on my Artisan Key 83. And overall, I'm just not really that big of a fan of how they felt. Like I said, they felt scratchy. They mostly felt scratchy here on the bottom skates. I think it's most likely because the cut isn't as rounded on the edges. I'm not entirely sure if it's because of that, but that's how I felt when using this mouse. It just felt really scratchy over here on these sides as well as here on the sensor skate. And overall, I would not really recommend them. I do wish that Eweadn would replace them with white PTFE skates. I do think that white PTFE skates are just much better, especially if they could at least make them as good as Incot or Lamzeus style of skates. But overall, like I said, I'm not really that big of a fan of skates. They're usable, but not really the best for me. Now, as you can see, the colorway that I have on my S9 Max is, I believe, what they're calling the parrot green version. And as you can see, it's this nice green glossy colorway. You can even see my ring light over there shining on the mouse itself. And it does look really nice and really cool visually, but in hand, the coating just doesn't really feel all that great. It feels sticky, but it doesn't even feel grippy. And comparing it to the coating on my Viper, which is using a matte rubberized coating, or what they are calling a smooth touch coating. I definitely prefer these kinds of coatings just because they don't really feel sticky. They feel grippy, but they don't really feel sticky in my hands. And over here, it just feels really sticky. Even when my hands are dry and clean, it still feels really sticky, and I'm not really that big of a fan of that. And when my hands gets really warm and moist during my gaming sessions, the mouse just feels really slippery as well. So I would definitely recommend using grip tapes if you're like me who sweats a lot when they game, or if you find the mouse in general really sticky like me as well. But if you don't really want to go for this colorway, I believe they also have different types of colorways. They have a black and white version, of course, as well as a red version. I believe their red version looks quite similar to the Sentinels version of the Viper V3 Pro, so it does look much nicer as well. But for me, I definitely wanted and liked the look on the parrot green colorway, especially since this is my first time having a mouse that is green. And overall, I still do like the look on this mouse. It looks really cool. Now, this mouse is using a 3395 sensor, and the performance on it is pretty good in my opinion. I think that the implementation isn't really that bad. It's not really the best 3395 implementation that I have tested, but it's definitely usable. And as for the other performance, I would say that the scroll wheel is probably one of the only things that I really found as a flaw when it comes to its performance. Like I said, I did experience some scroll wheel jumping when playing, and it's most likely due to the scroll wheel being lighter. So if you do like lighter scroll wheels, then you would definitely enjoy using the S9 Max. But if you're like me who prefers something a little bit more stiffer, or something that has more indistinguishable steps on their scroll wheel, then I would definitely recommend trying out different mice. And I wouldn't really recommend trying this mouse out if you're really just looking for a mouse that has a really good scroll wheel. Now, if you guys haven't noticed yet, yes, this is another Razer Viper V3 Pro clone, but in my opinion, it is the closest Viper V3 Pro clone that I have tested. If you remembered, I previously reviewed the MH01 Pro from ROM, and that one doesn't even feel that similar to the Viper V3 Pro. It feels somewhat similar, but not really. I would say that the Eweadn S9 Max just feels way more closer to the Viper V3 Pro's shape. And as you can see, even the side buttons look quite similar to one another. Even the positioning of the side buttons, the height looks very similar to one another. The mouse 1 and mouse 2, I would say that the length maybe is a little bit more longer here on the Viper compared to the Eweadn S9. Maybe it's just because of this being like this weird line over here. I'm not really sure what to call it, but yeah, even here on the sides, as you can see, they look very similar. Even on the top area, I would say that the USB over here is just a little bit more flared out compared to here on the Viper, where it's much more flushed inwards the mouse itself. But overall, in hand, it really does feel similar to the Razer Viper V3 Pro, and I do like the mouse itself. And I would definitely recommend trying this mouse out if you're looking for a really near one-to-one clone of the Razer Viper V3 Pro. Now, looking into Elo Shapes over here, as you can see, we have the Eweadn S9 Pro and the Razer Viper V3 Pro. Now, unfortunately, they don't have the S9 Max just yet on Elo Shapes. I'm hoping that in the future they will, but for now I'm using the S9 Pro. But as you can see, for the height and width, I would say that those are the only two that are different compared to the Viper V3 Pro. As you can see, the width would be slightly more wider on the S9, as well as the height be slightly more taller, but in hand doesn't really feel all that different. I would say that yes, the width does feel a little bit more wider on the S9 compared to the Viper, but I would say that the biggest difference between these two, other than the specs, would be the weight. Obviously here on the Pro it says that it weighs 64 grams, but if we look into Eweadn's official website over here on the S9 Max, it actually weighs around 59 grams, plus minus 3 grams obviously. but even if it weighs at 62 grams, it doesn't really feel that noticeable in game. But if you do pick up both my side by side, then you would definitely feel the weight difference between the two. But in my opinion, it doesn't really feel all that bad, and it's definitely usable, and I would definitely still recommend it even if the weight is coming in at 59 grams. And overall, I still think that the shape just looks really nice and really similar to the Viper V3 Pro. And if you know me, I do like and enjoy the shape on the Viper V3 Pro, so having a nice budget option with the Eweadn S9 is just a really big plus for me.
Destabilizing. Reloading. Enemy kill. Here. Grounded.
We know my power. I need more bullets! I need more bullets! I need more bullets! I need more bullets! I need more bullets!
Now, should you buy the Eweadn S9 Max? Now, if you are in the market for a near one-to-one clone of the Razer Viper V3 Pro, then I would suggest trying out the Eweadn S9 Max. I do think that it still is a pretty good mouse, even with the coating being really sticky on my hands and me not really being that big of a fan of the scroll wheel being light. I still do recommend trying this mouse out. I think that the shape is very much close to the Viper V3 Pro as it can get. Even the side buttons, like I said, is near similar to the Viper V3 Pro in terms of the positioning. And as for the performance, I would say it's not really on par, but it's definitely still decent for a 3095 sensor. And if you want, there is the Ultra version, which has the PAW 3950 from Pixar. And the build quality is pretty much just really good and can pretty much be on par with the Viper's build quality. The skates, however, I would recommend replacing them if you want the best performance possible. But if you're just a casual gamer or doesn't really have access to a replacement skate, then I would suggest just using the regular skates that came with it. And like I said, it's definitely usable, but not really something that I would prefer over better or other PTFE skates out there. Anyways, that's pretty much it for my review of the Eweadn S9 Max. I'll make sure to leave a link down in the description below to where you can get this mouse, as well as the links to my affiliates and discount codes for other brands. Now, if you guys enjoyed this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. It helps a lot with the channel and for me to be able to make more videos like this for you guys. Make sure to also follow me on my socials. Links to those will be down in the description as well. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.